There comes a moment quiet as a breath, soft as morning light, when you stop running, you stop reaching. Not because the journey is over, but because something ancient stirs in you, something sacred that whispers not of what is missing, but of what has always been present. And in that holy stillness, a truth begins to dawn, not like a sudden revelation, but like the sun slowly rising over the ocean of your soul. You already have enough. You, beloved, have been born whole, not one day in the distant future, not after you earn it, deserve it, prove it. From the first flutter of life within your mother's womb, you were declared complete by the very source that breathes stars into existence. There is nothing broken in you, nothing missing, nothing that must be added for you to be worthy of love, of peace, of joy. You are the sacred whole pretending to be incomplete, the eternal flame wrapped in temporary shadow, the vast ocean disguised as a wave. But the world taught you otherwise. It told you that you must strive, compete, accumulate. It sold you the story that you are not enough unless you become more and more beautiful, more successful, more liked, more productive. And so you became a collector of more, chasing external validation like a mirage on the horizon. Yet each time you reached it, the thirst remained. Why? Because you cannot drink truth from the cup of illusion. You already have enough. Not in the sense that your possessions are sufficient, but in the deeper, eternal sense that you are already whole. The enoughness I speak of is not a measure of quantity, it is a state of being. It is the deep abiding peace that arises when you stop confusing your identity with your achievements, when you stop measuring your worth by the standards of a world that has forgotten the soul. You were never meant to be what others expect. You were born to be what the divine expressed. Look at nature, it does not strive to impress. The tree does not apologize for how slowly it grows. The ocean does not beg to be deeper. The stars do not compete for brightness. Each simply is radiant, unhurried, sufficient. And so are you. The great illusion of the ego is lack. It whispers that there is something wrong with you, that you must hustle to be worthy, that your value lies in doing rather than being. But the soul knows better. The soul does not strive. The soul does not beg. The soul simply shines. It knows its worth because it remembers its source. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." The Tao reminds us, "He who knows he has enough is rich." And Rumi, with the elegance of a mystic, said, "You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life?" These are not poetic metaphors. They are soul truths, echoes of the eternal wisdom that lives inside you now, waiting not to be earned, but to be recognized. Pause for a moment. Feel your breath, not as a mechanical function, but as a divine rhythm. Each inhale is a receiving. Each exhale is a releasing. In this sacred exchange, you lack nothing. The breath does not demand payment. It is freely given, just like life, just like love, just like the grace that has carried you through every storm, even the ones you thought would break you. You already have enough. You have enough courage to rise again, even if your hands still tremble. You have enough love to heal the wounds you thought were permanent. You have enough light to find your way home in the darkest night. The answers you seek do not live in someone else's book, someone else's approval, someone else's arms. They live in the quiet chamber of your own soul, behind the noise of your doubt, beyond the fog of your forgetting. And what if your life was not a journey to attain something new, but a sacred unveiling of what has always been there? What if every breakdown was a breakthrough in disguise, sent not to punish you, but to peel away the false and reveal the true? What if your heartbreaks were not failures, but sacred doorways into deeper compassion? What if your emptiness was not a curse, but a call to stop stuffing your soul with distractions and return to the divine fullness already within? You already have enough, not just materially, spiritually, energetically. You have the wisdom of the stars in your cells. You have the memory of wholeness in your heart. You have the divine blueprint encoded in your very breath. You do not need to become enlightened. You are enlightenment, temporarily pretending to be lost. You do not need to seek love. You are love, experiencing itself in form. The greatest lie you were ever told is that you must earn what you already are. And the most profound freedom you will ever know is the moment you realize you don't have to. Let the world chase illusions. Let others build towers of ego, and climb mountains of validation. You be still. Sink deep into the ground of your being. Feel the sacred enoughness that has always been your foundation. In this stillness, miracles happen not because you forced them, but because you finally got out of the way. You don't have to do more. You don't have to be more. You don't have to fix what was never broken. The ego says, improve. The soul says, remember. The ego screams, you are not there yet. The soul whispers, you have never left. Stop trying to outrun your humanity. Embrace it. Bow to it. Let it be the very altar upon which your divinity dances. Because your scars do not diminish your light, they refract it. Your flaws do not obscure your holiness, they reveal the texture of your soul's depth. And your fears, they do not disqualify you. They are simply shadows cast by the light you have forgotten is yours. You already have enough, even when you feel like you don't. Even when you doubt, when you stumble, when you forget, especially then. Because enoughness is not a feeling, it is a truth. It is not something you earn, it is something you are. You were not born to strive, you were born to shine. And the only thing standing in the way is the thought that something is missing, but there is nothing missing in you. There never was, there never will be. Let this be the day you stop measuring yourself by a broken ruler. Let this be the hour you return, not to perfection, but to presence. Let this be the breath where you remember not with your mind, but with your being that you already have enough. You are enough. You are whole. You are home. And that, beloved, is more than enough. And as you sit now with this truth warming your chest like morning sun through a window, notice how your very being softens. The mind, so used to racing, so trained in doubt, begins to slow, not because it has all the answers, but because it is no longer trying to prove the question. You were never the question. You have always been the answer. The sacred wordless answer wrapped in form and breath and ache and joy. You are the poem life is still reciting, not for applause, but for the beauty of its own echo. There is no final summit, no last prize that when earned will whisper, now you are enough. That voice has always whispered. You've just been taught to ignore it, taught to listen to the louder voice, the voice of culture, of comparison, of not yet, but the whisper is still there. It never left. It lives in the spaces between your thoughts, in the tears you don't understand, in the longing that has no name. It lives in the stillness after surrender, when you finally stop trying to win your own love. You see, the soul never asked you to perform. It never required applause. It only asked you to feel, to remember, to allow. But we became performers in a theater of forgetting. We put on the costume of getting there, of not quite, of someday. And in doing so, we hid our radiance behind roles that never truly fit. We dimmed our own light and called it humility. We denied our sufficiency and called it discipline. But the truth is, the greatest act of courage is to finally, irrevocably accept yourself. Not the self you show the world, but the one who exists before effort, before shame, before identity. That self, the unnameable, unshakable beingness beneath all striving, is what is holy. And when you live from that place, everything shifts. You begin to live with your soul at the helm, not because you learned something new, but because you unlearned everything that told you you weren't enough. It's not that you must stop growing. Growth is sacred, but not when it is rooted in lack. Grow because you are enough, not because you aren't. Create from overflow, not from emptiness. Serve because you remember, not because you are trying to be remembered. Let your life bloom not to be impressive, but to be expressed. You are not a seed trying to become a tree. You are the tree already planted, already rooted, already reaching. The seed was never separate from the oak. It was the oak in hiding. And so it is with you. Every ache you've ever felt was the cracking open of that seed. Every heartbreak was the soil breaking loose so you could rise. Every time you thought you were being buried, you were actually being planted. And now, beloved, you are rising, not because you've acquired something, but because you finally laid something down. The burden of proving, the armor of pretending, the weight of false identity. What a sacred relief it is to no longer strive, to no longer chase love, because you've remembered you are its very source. This is not resignation, it is revelation. It is the sacred turning inward, the bowing of the ego at the feet of the soul. It is the silent revolution that begins when you no longer seek the light, because you realize you are the light. Let the world say what it will. Let it misunderstand you, undervalue you, overlook you. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be free. And freedom does not come from convincing, it comes from remembering, from knowing that your worth was never up for debate. It was sealed into you by the hand of the infinite. Your breath is the signature of God. Your being is the evidence of enoughness. And if you could see yourself as the universe sees you, even for a moment, your heart would burst with awe. There is no part of you that is unworthy of love. No moment in your story that disqualifies you from grace. Even your pain, especially your pain, has been holy. It carved the space where the light now enters. It shaped your compassion, molded your depth, softened your pride. Nothing was wasted. Not one tear. Not one night spent wondering. Not one fall from grace. Every step brought you here. To this remembering. And this remembering is not just for you. When one soul remembers its enoughness, it sends ripples into the collective. Your healing becomes a map for others. Your wholeness becomes a mirror. You do not have to preach. You do not have to teach. You only have to be. And your being will do the rest. There is a power and presence that no performance can match. A power that doesn't need words, because it is felt in the silence. This world is not in need of more noise. It is starving for stillness. And stillness is born of enoughness. It is born of the sacred sigh that leaves your lips when you realize, I am already home. You may not have everything you want, but you already are everything you need. And when that truth roots in you, not just in your thoughts, but in your bones, you become untouchable. Not in the sense that nothing can hurt you, but in the deeper sense that nothing can define you. You move through joy and sorrow with equal reverence. You begin to see that everything is happening not to break you, but to wake you. Not to punish, but to polish. Not to deprive, but to direct. What if your life has never been off course? What if every detour was the path? What if the enoughness you seek was never at the finish line, but has been walking beside you all along? Breathe that in. Let it settle. Let it undo the grip of striving. Let it soften the corners of your self-judgment. You have tried so hard. You have carried so much. And now you are allowed to rest. Not because the work is done, but because you no longer believe your worth is tied to the outcome. You already have enough. You are already the flame, not the one lighting the fire, but the fire itself. There is something unspeakably holy about simplicity. The kind of simplicity that arrives not by shrinking the world, but by expanding your awareness of what truly matters. The deeper you go into yourself, the more the clutter of illusion falls away. Not with force, but with grace. Like leaves letting go of a tree in autumn, because they were never meant to stay. You begin to see how little you need in order to feel whole, because wholeness is not something you build, it's something you return to. When you stop defining your life by what you accumulate, you begin to remember yourself by what you emanate. You become less concerned with impressions and more devoted to expression. You cease reaching outward and begin radiating inward. The energy of needing becomes the energy of knowing. And from knowing arises peace, not the passive kind, but the radiant, grounded kind that walks through storms without losing its center. You do not need to chase after your purpose as though it's hiding from you. Your purpose is not a prize, it is a presence. It is not something you find, it is something you allow. It lives in the way you speak when your heart is open, in the way your eyes soften when you truly see another, in the way your soul breathes more deeply when you align with truth. Your purpose is not an event, it is a frequency. And you are already tuned to it if you will only stop changing the station out of fear. Every comparison is a forgetting. Every moment you measure your life against another's timeline is a moment you silence your own soul's wisdom. You were never meant to be a replica of someone else's light. You were created to shine in a way that only you can. And the moment you abandon imitation is the moment your true power begins to flow. Not a power of dominance, but of authenticity. The kind of power that turns heads, not with volume, but with vibration. You are not here to compete. You are here to remember. To remember that your uniqueness is not a flaw, it is your fingerprint from the divine. No one else can bring your exact essence into the world. No one else can breathe your breath, love your way, walk your soul's path. To try to become someone else is to dim the very miracle that is you. And the world doesn't need another copy. It needs the unfiltered, unmasked, unrepeatable light that you carry. Can you feel it now? That subtle shift inside you. The space that opens when you no longer resist what is. That, beloved, is alignment. That is surrender. That is the sacred return. You do not have to solve your life like a puzzle. You only have to live it like a prayer. Each step a bow, each word a blessing, each silence a sanctuary. You begin to recognize that even your breath is an act of worship when it is taken in awareness. The ego wants outcomes. The soul desires openness. The ego fears the unknown. The soul welcomes the unfolding. The ego clings to control. The soul lives in communion. And each time you choose soul over ego, you align with the rhythm of life itself. You stop pushing the river and allow yourself to float. Not because you've given up, but because you've woken up. You trust that the same force that turns acorns into forests and embryos into human beings is shaping your life with equal precision. There is no need to resist the rhythm. Even your seasons of waiting are sacred. Even your moments of doubt are seeds of depth. Even your silence speaks volumes in the language of the divine. You do not need to be loud to be powerful. You do not need to be certain to be true. You do not need to be flawless to be whole. What you need is already here, presence. That holy, spacious awareness that wraps its arms around whatever arises and says, this too belongs. So stop withholding your peace. Stop placing conditions on your joy. There is no future version of you that will be more worthy of freedom than the one sitting here right now. The doorway is not ahead of you, it is beneath your very feet. All that is required is that you stop stepping over it and instead step through. Let life be as it is, not because you are powerless to change it, but because true change begins with acceptance. You cannot transform what you still resist. You cannot evolve while denying the ground you stand on. And so, let this be your holy ground, this moment, this breath, this being. And when you begin to walk this way, not chasing, not proving, but simply allowing something miraculous occurs, you begin to feel life loving you back. The synchronicities, the clarity, the quiet knowing. They are not accidents, they are echoes. Echoes of your return to your natural state of enoughness. When you no longer grasp, you open. And what flows into that openness is everything you once thought you had to earn. You were never meant to grip life so tightly. You were meant to dance with it, to let it move through you like music, to trust its pauses as much as its crescendos, to let go of needing the next note to make sense, and instead revel in the melody unfolding moment by moment. There's no destination more sacred than this, to live so fully aligned with your soul that even in uncertainty you feel whole, to walk the world not needing to be more, but choosing to be deeply, utterly present, because, beloved, you already have enough. There is a place within you where the wind does not reach, where time loses its grip, where wounds are not bandaged, but transfigured into wisdom. That place is not reserved for the chosen, nor built through effort. It is your original home, the unchanging space of awareness, untouched by identity. You do not need to fight your way back to it. You need only stop turning away. You see, wholeness has never required your perfection. It only requires your presence. And when you stop trying to fix what was never broken, you begin to see the divine intelligence, even in your detours. What once felt like failure begins to feel like preparation. What once looked like delay reveals itself as divine timing. You start to realize that every unanswered prayer was a doorway to a greater alignment. Every no you received echoed a deeper yes, whispered by the universe. And as you rest into this deeper rhythm, you feel something loosening, perhaps the tightness in your chest that has lived there since childhood, or the belief that you had to earn love by becoming smaller or smarter or more pleasing. Let it go now. Not with force, with grace, with forgiveness. With the understanding that you were never wrong for longing, never wrong for not knowing, never wrong for simply being human. Even your uncertainty was sacred. You were never behind. You were never late. You were simply blooming according to a timeline the world does not understand. Like the lotus that takes years beneath the surface before it blossoms in beauty above the water, you too have been becoming in silence, preparing in shadows, softening in sorrow. And now, here you are not complete because you added something, but because you finally laid something down. And what is left in the absence of all that grasping, striving, and fixing? Peace. Not the brittle peace of avoidance, but the deep-rooted peace of coming home. The kind of peace that arises when you stop editing yourself, when you breathe without apology, when you speak not to be accepted, but because silence is no longer an option. When you allow joy to visit you even when the world insists it is inappropriate. That kind of peace is not earned, it is remembered. And in that remembrance, your eyes begin to see differently. You no longer look out at the world through the lens of scarcity. You see not just objects or obstacles, but symbols, messages, miracles. The tree outside your window is no longer just a tree, it is a sermon in stillness. The stranger's smile on the street becomes an echo of your own light reflected back to you. Even your own breath becomes a sacred chant. Inhale, I am. Exhale, enough. There is a holiness to this way of living. A reverence not tied to religion, but born of intimacy with life itself. You begin to taste the divine in a glass of water. Hear God's voice in the quiet between words. Feel eternity pulsing in the most fleeting of moments, because everything becomes more vivid, more tender, more real when seen through the eyes of presence. You are not here to endure your life. You are here to feel it, to taste, to witness it, to let it shape you not into something better, but into something truer. And the truth is, you were always this vast, this sacred, this enough. You just forgot. And now you remember, not with the mind that analyzes, but with the heart that recognizes. Not with logic, but with love. Not through proof, but through presence. And as this remembering deepens, you find yourself speaking less from the surface and more from the soul. Your words slow down. Your movements become intentional. You stop rushing to the next thing and begin to meet the moment like an old friend. You learn that silence is not emptiness, but fullness beyond words. That rest is not laziness, but alignment. That the real treasure is not at the end of your to-do list, but hidden in plain sight, in the rhythm of your breath, in the warmth of your hands, in the stillness of now. There is no need to rush this process. There is no finish line, no final arrival. This journey is not about becoming extraordinary. It is about reclaiming the ordinary as sacred. Washing the dishes becomes a ceremony of devotion. Tending to your body becomes an act of reverence. Holding space for another becomes a prayer without words. Life, in its simplest moments, becomes your greatest teacher. And what you learn is this: nothing more is required of you. You do not need to chase transformation. It is already happening with every surrendered breath. You do not need to force love. You are swimming in it. You do not need to seek power. The power is in your presence. You are already full, already worthy, already home, and when the world forgets, because it will when it tempts you again with the lie that you must achieve more, become more, do more to be loved, remember this truth not as an idea, but as a way of being. You already have enough. You have not journeyed to become more. You have not wandered to find what was lost. You have traveled only to remember what was never absent. And now, like a circle coming full, like a wave folding back into the ocean, you stand once more at the threshold of your own being, not as a seeker, but as a witness. You look into the mirror, and you no longer see lack staring back. You see life. Raw, real, radiant, not flawless, but beautiful in its honesty. Not polished, but luminous in its vulnerability. You meet your own eyes, and you no longer beg them for proof. You see the fire, the softness, the sacred resilience of a soul that has weathered every storm and still dares to love again. You begin to understand that wholeness is not an achievement, it is an acceptance. It is not the result of fixing every flaw, but of embracing every piece, even the parts you once exiled, especially those, the forgotten child within you, the trembling self who needed more time. The shadow you denied each one is welcomed back now, each one held in the warmth of your awakening heart. And what a miracle it is to no longer abandon yourself, to no longer demand that joy wait until the circumstances are perfect, to no longer withhold your own embrace until you've earned it. You stand now not on the edge of something greater, but at the very center of it, the sacred now, the holy inhale, the stillness that has always known your name. This is not the end. It is the beginning of living from enoughness, the beginning of no longer seeking the light, but realizing you are the flame, the beginning of walking through the world not asking, am I worthy, but declaring, I am. And as you walk this path of presence, you carry no banner, wear no badge. You do not need to prove your peace. It is felt in your silence. It is known in your gaze. It is offered in the way you hold space for others to remember themselves. This, beloved, is the quiet revolution of the soul. Not a storm, a sunrise. Not a roar, a presence, not a conquest, a return. You return to the moment with reverence. You return to your breath with gratitude. You return to the world with softness. And the world, once harsh and sharp in its edges, begins to soften in response. Because when you remember you are enough, you remind others that they are too. And that is the healing, not to fix the world, but to embody truth so deeply that the illusion of lack begins to dissolve wherever you stand. You become the space where peace breathes more freely, the voice that speaks without urgency, the soul that offers love without condition. And though the path may still twist, though the winds may still rise, you no longer fear the unknown. You have walked through the wilderness of forgetting and emerged with the only treasure that matters, remembrance. Remembrance that you are not separate. Remembrance that you are not broken. Remembrance that you are not becoming, you are being. You already have enough, not someday. Not if, now, here, always. And so, return. Return to the quiet. Return to the sacred. Return to yourself. And know deeply, finally, forever, you were never missing. You were never lacking. You were never not enough. You are the light. You are the love. You are the miracle. You are the way home. And now you have arrived. There is a quiet truth that the world often forgets, whispered not in the roar of achievement, but in the hush of gratitude. And that truth is this: abundance does not arrive when you acquire more. It arrives when you see more, when you allow yourself to feel more, when you open your heart to the sacredness of what already is. The world will tell you to chase, to strive, to accumulate, believing that once you have enough, then you will feel full. But I tell you, fullness is not something you reach, it is something you remember. It is something that awakens in the presence of appreciation. It is born not of having everything, but of honoring everything. Not of ownership, but of awareness. Look around you, not with the eyes of want, but with the eyes of wonder. The same breath that animates the stars moves through you. The same intelligence that orchestrates the tides has been placed within your heartbeat. And yet, how often we overlook the miracle of our own existence, searching instead for symbols of success outside of ourselves. But real success is not measured by the weight of what you carry, it is revealed by the lightness of your spirit. And nothing lightens the soul more powerfully than appreciation. For when you appreciate something, you increase its value, not just in the world, but in your perception. And perception, dear soul, is the birthplace of your reality. The ego, with all its noise, will always ask, what's next? But the soul, wise and eternal, gently asks, what's now? And in the now, there is always something to bless, always something to behold, always something that, when given the gift of your attention, becomes sacred. Appreciation is not a reaction, it is a choice. A sacred decision to meet the moment with reverence, to honor the ordinary as extraordinary, to speak silently to the universe and say, I see you, I feel you, I thank you. And in that simple shift of seeing, a miracle unfolds not in the world, but in you. You begin to notice the divine in a stranger's smile. You begin to feel the sacred in your own breath. You begin to see that even the smallest leaf trembling in the wind holds the wisdom of eternity. And suddenly, life stops being something to endure and becomes something to celebrate. It is not that the world changes. It is that you begin to see it with the eyes of your soul and not the filter of your fears. And that sight, beloved, is the essence of abundance. Not the kind that clings, but the kind that radiates. Not the kind that seeks, but the kind that sees. You were never asked to become more, only to notice more. To soften your gaze until you recognize that what you long for is already present, waiting patiently to be seen. The joy you chase. It's in the quiet moment before dawn. The love you crave, it's in the way your chest rises with each breath. The wealth you desire, it's in the immeasurable value of this moment. Appreciation doesn't require change, it requires presence. And presence is the gateway to the divine. Let me continue the full speech for you now. in one uninterrupted flow. Here's the complete soul awakening speech titled Abundance Begins with Appreciation in the uninterrupted spiritual style of Wayne Dyer. There is a quiet truth that the world often forgets, whispered not in the roar of achievement, but in the hush of gratitude. And that truth is this: abundance does not arrive when you acquire more. It arrives when you see more, when you allow yourself to feel more, when you open your heart to the sacredness of what already is. The world will tell you to chase, to strive, to accumulate, believing that once you have enough, then you will feel full. But I tell you, fullness is not something you reach, it is something you remember. It is something that awakens in the presence of appreciation. It is born not of having everything, but of honoring everything. Not of ownership, but of awareness. Look around you, not with the eyes of want, but with the eyes of wonder. The same breath that animates the stars moves through you. The same intelligence that orchestrates the tides has been placed within your heartbeat. And yet, how often we overlook the miracle of our own existence, searching instead for symbols of success outside of ourselves. But real success is not measured by the weight of what you carry. It is revealed by the lightness of your spirit. And nothing lightens the soul more powerfully than appreciation. For when you appreciate something, you increase its value not just in the world, but in your perception. And perception, dear soul, is the birthplace of your reality. The ego, with all its noise, will always ask, what's next? But the soul, wise and eternal, gently asks, what's now? And in the now, there is always something to bless, always something to behold, always something that, when given the gift of your attention, becomes sacred. Appreciation is not a reaction, it is a choice. A sacred decision to meet the moment with reverence, to honor the ordinary as extraordinary, to speak silently to the universe and say, I see you, I feel you, I thank you. And in that simple shift of seeing, a miracle unfolds not in the world, but in you. You begin to notice the divine in a stranger's smile. You begin to feel the sacred in your own breath. You begin to see that even the smallest leaf trembling in the wind holds the wisdom of eternity. And suddenly, life stops being something to endure and becomes something to celebrate. It is not that the world changes. It is that you begin to see it with the eyes of your soul and not the filter of your fears. And that sight, beloved, is the essence of abundance. Not the kind that clings, but the kind that radiates. Not the kind that seeks, but the kind that sees. You were never asked to become more, only to notice more, to soften your gaze until you recognize that what you long for is already present, waiting patiently to be seen. The joy you chase, it's in the quiet moment before dawn. The love you crave, it's in the way your chest rises with each breath. The wealth you desire, it's in the immeasurable value of this moment. Appreciation doesn't require change, it requires presence. And presence is the gateway to the divine. To appreciate is to say yes to what is. It is to bow before the altar of this very breath and recognize it as holy. Not because it is perfect, but because it is real. Because it is here, because it is yours. And in that yes, resistance softens, the grip of lack loosens, the illusion of scarcity dissolves like mist in the morning sunday, and what remains is clarity, stillness, wholeness. What remains is truth. This is the miracle. When you stop running from your life and start showing up for it, you realize that abundance was never a destination, it was a way of seeing. It was never about what you could get. It was always about how deeply you could receive. Every spiritual teacher has said it in their own way. Jesus spoke of the lilies of the field, how they toil not, yet are clothed in splendor. The Tao speaks of water, how it yields, how it nourishes, how it flows with life itself. Rumi sang of the soul's longing not for more, but for return. And what are they all pointing to? They are pointing to now, to presence, to appreciation. You see, the soul is not impressed by possessions. It does not measure worth by accumulation. The soul asks only one thing: are you awake to the miracle of what is? And if you are, then everything is a gift. Even the pain, even the waiting, even the longing. For even in your hunger, there is something to bless. Even in your sorrow, there is something to see. Gratitude is not the denial of difficulty, it is the embrace of truth. And the truth is, no matter what is missing, there is always something here, something to hold, something to honor, something that, when appreciated, becomes the gateway to joy. Abundance does not begin with having it, begins with being aware, being grateful, being present. And from that state of being, all things flow, not because you are trying to make them happen, but because you have become the space in which they can arise. Life responds not to your struggle, but to your alignment. When you are aligned with appreciation, life rushes in not to fix you, but to join you, not to complete you, but to dance with you. And in that dance, you realize that nothing was ever missing, that you were never lacking, that all the love, all the joy, all the meaning you sought outside of yourself has always been quietly blooming within. You are not poor. You are powerful. You are not waiting for abundance. Abundance is waiting for your recognition. So pause, breathe, look not outward, but inward, and as you do, may the eyes of your soul open. May you see not through the lens of comparison or desire, but through the sacred filter of appreciation. And in that seeing, may your life become the prayer it was always meant to be. Let me know if you'd like this speech formatted as a downloadable document or adapted for another format. There is a holiness that awakens when you stop chasing and begin cherishing. When you cease the endless grasping for more and allow your awareness to settle upon what already surrounds you, you enter the temple of your own life. Each breath becomes incense, each heartbeat a sacred drum, and every seemingly insignificant detail a whisper from the divine reminding you, I am here. Not in the future you crave, not in the past you regret, but in the quiet miracle of now. To live in appreciation is to live as if everything is a message from source, as if every flicker of light, every gust of wind, every passing face is encoded with the wisdom of the infinite. You begin to realize that you are not separate from life. You are the awareness in which life unfolds. You are not a guest in this world. You are its witness, its lover, its expression. And to appreciate something is to fuse with it, to say to existence itself, I see you and I call you sacred. Quote, gratitude opens the eyes not just of the mind, but of the heart. It softens the armor that the ego so quickly constructs. It dismantles the illusion that you must earn your worth, that you must accomplish something grand in order to be whole. Gratitude whispers you are already enough, and in that whisper is the power to unbind the spirit from the chains of striving. You no longer need to chase the sunrise when you realize you are already bathed in light. The mystics have always known this. They did not find peace in distant mountains or hidden scriptures. They found it in the way a flame danced, in the sound of rain on a quiet night, in the feeling of a hand held in silence. They knew that God was not hiding in some far-off heaven, but breathing within the ordinary. They knew that to appreciate was to pray, not with words, but with attention. And so must we learn to see with those same eyes, not the eyes trained to judge or compare, but the eyes of wonder. When you give thanks for what is, you step into the frequency of the eternal. Time slows, presence deepens. And the ego, which thrives on wanting, on waiting, on withholding, loses its grip. You realize you are no longer a seeker, but a finder. You are no longer wandering through lack, but walking through a field of infinite richness where every step becomes a hymn and every breath becomes a reminder. This is enough. This is holy. This is life. And as this appreciation deepens, it becomes not just a momentary feeling, but a way of being. It saturates your movements, your words, your silences. You begin to see the world not as a place to conquer, but as a miracle to behold. The need to prove yourself dissolves like morning mist, and in its place rises a gentle knowing. I am not lacking. I am not waiting. I am not broken. I am aware. I am here. And that here-ness becomes your sanctuary. You stop waiting for the stars to align and realize they already have they aligned the moment you open your heart to this moment, just as it is. To truly appreciate is to kneel inwardly before the altar of existence and say yes to all of it. Not just the joys, but the sorrows. Not just the comfort, but the aching. Because when you are fully present with life, you begin to understand that even your pain has been your teacher, your fear has been your path, and your longing has always been the voice of love disguised as emptiness. And when you stop trying to escape the difficult moments and instead breathe with them, bless them, listen to them, they begin to soften. They begin to reveal the hidden seeds. They carry seeds of awakening, of wisdom, of deeper compassion. You learn that true appreciation is not conditional. It is not reserved for the good days or the pleasing outcomes. It is a reverence that rises regardless of circumstance. It is the courage to bless the rain when you prayed for Sunday, to whisper thank you when everything inside you wants to cry out why. This kind of gratitude doesn't come from the ego, it comes from the soul. And the soul does not live in preferences. It lives in presence. And from that presence, miracles begin to rise, not because reality has changed, but because your way of seeing has. You begin to witness beauty in places you once overlooked. You begin to hear music in the silence. You begin to feel guided, even in uncertainty. Because appreciation sharpens your spiritual vision. It aligns your inner compass, not with the noise of the world, but with the rhythm of truth. And when you live in alignment, life begins to cooperate with your spirit. Not because you are controlling it, but because you are finally flowing with it. Appreciation turns every encounter into a blessing. It allows you to see people not as problems or puzzles, but as mirrors and messengers. Every soul you meet becomes a carrier of light, even if cloaked in shadow. You begin to greet others with the recognition that they too are divine beings on a sacred journey of remembering. And even in conflict, you see the call for love beneath the words. You feel the ache behind the anger. You touch the tenderness beneath the armor. In this way, appreciation becomes the bridge that connects you to everything. It dissolves the illusion of separation. It reminds you that you are not alone, that the very same intelligence that shaped you shaped the trees and the rivers and the winds. And so you walk differently, not with fear, but with reverence. You speak differently, not to impress, but to connect. You live differently, not to achieve, but to express. To live in this state is to become a living prayer, not the kind recited, but the kind embodied. You become a sanctuary, not just for yourself, but for all who cross your path. Your presence becomes medicine, not because you have the answers, but because you have awakened to the miracle of being. And in that awakening, the world begins to shift not through force, but through resonance. You stop fighting for abundance and instead become its embodiment. You no longer ask for more, you become more aware. And in that awareness, the very fabric of life seems to dance around you. Synchronicities appear, doors open, peace becomes your natural state. Because the universe does not withhold, it responds, it echoes your vibration. And when your vibration is one of gratitude, of appreciation, of reverent wonder, life cannot help but rise to meet you in grace. And so appreciation becomes not merely a feeling you visit, but a realm you live within. It becomes the water you swim in, the sky that surrounds you, the quiet hum beneath your every step. You no longer need a reason to be grateful, for gratitude itself becomes the reason. You no longer wait for life to give you what you think you want, for you've discovered the treasure is not in the having, but in the seeing. You no longer measure abundance by the size of your possessions, but by the openness of your heart. And your heart, when freed from the hunger of expectation, begins to bloom like a wildflower, unafraid of the wind. You start to find yourself whispering thank you at unexpected times, as the morning light spills through your window, as the rain caresses the roof with its rhythmic song, as the laughter of a child breaks through the chaos of the world like sunlight piercing clouds. You no longer require perfection to feel peace. You no longer ask the moment to be different in order to love it. Because you have learned the secret, every moment is already enough when you are present enough to feel it. This is not a mental exercise. This is a soul remembering, a return to the way you once knew how to live before the world convinced you to measure and compare and grasp. You knew this as a child, when a puddle could be a playground, when a single dandelion was a treasure, when a loving gaze could make the whole world feel safe. That innocence was not naivety, it was truth. It was presence, it was appreciation untainted by expectation. To return to this truth is not to regress it, is to awaken. It is to strip away the hardened layers of judgment and reveal again the tender center of your being. The part of you that can look at the sky and feel awe. The part that can sit in silence and feel held. The part that doesn't need to be more because it is already whole. And as you begin to live from this space, time changes. It stretches, it deepens. Moments feel fuller, conversations more sacred, experiences richer. You no longer rush through your days chasing some imagined fulfillment around the corner. You begin to walk slowly, deliberately, as if each step mattered. Because it does. Each step is a miracle in motion. Each breath is an invitation to feel the pulse of eternity moving through your veins. You become aware of how precious everything is. The way your hands can hold, your voice can soothe, your presence can comfort. You stop underestimating the sacredness of simplicity. A cup of warm tea, the warmth of a blanket, the sound of your own heartbeat in the stillness of night. And in this sacred noticing, you realize you've been wealthy all along, not in things, but in presence. Even your challenges take on new meaning. You stop asking, why me, and begin asking, what is this here to show me? You stop resisting pain and begin receiving it not as punishment, but as purification. Every loss, every detour, every unanswered prayer becomes a part of your becoming. And appreciation becomes the light you carry through the darkness, illuminating even the corners you once feared. You become a lighthouse, not because you've avoided the storm, but because you've found stillness within it. You shine not by effort, but by essence. You no longer chase abundance, you become it. You no longer seek joy, you embody it. You no longer ask life to be different, you meet it as it is, with open arms and a grateful heart. And in this meeting, the entire universe seems to bow, not because it has changed, but because you have. You have remembered the truth that abundance was never a matter of having. It was always a matter of seeing, it was always a matter of being. And as the days unfold beneath your gaze of gratitude, you come to understand that life has never been random, nor cruel, nor indifferent. It has been precise, poetic, and profoundly generous in ways your mind may never fully grasp, but your soul has always known. The heartache you carried was not in vain. The delays were not denials. The seasons of emptiness were not punishments, but invitations, divine pauses, sculpting the capacity within you to hold more light, more depth, more love. With appreciation, even your past begins to shimmer differently. The sharp edges soften. The narrative changes. No longer a story of wounds and wrong turns, but a sacred map of becoming. You see how each experience, especially the ones that once broke you, is placing in your hands the key to greater compassion, the alchemy of resilience, the understanding that your spirit cannot be diminished by circumstance, only deepened by it. And so you bless the path behind you, not because it was easy, but because it was real, because it carved you into something vast and open and wildly alive. And with this deepened gaze, you begin to approach the world, not with demand, but with reverence. You meet people as fellow travelers, not as characters to judge or compare or conquer. You recognize that every soul is doing the best they can with what they know, and even those who have hurt you were operating from their own unhealed pain. This doesn't make their actions right, but it does make your heart free. For forgiveness blooms not from logic, but from appreciation, from the recognition that you no longer need to carry the weight of the wound to honor the lesson it brought. This is where abundance becomes unstoppable, not because you're receiving more, but because you're resisting less. The stream of life, once blocked by judgment and fear and striving, now flows freely through you. And in that flow, you become available not just to joy, but to beauty, to synchronicity, to divine guidance that speaks in subtle, serendipitous ways. You find yourself in the right place at the right time, not because of strategy, but because of surrender. You no longer live from effort, but from essence. You no longer chase the spotlight, you've become the light. Quiet, constant, radiant. Your presence becomes your power. Your appreciation becomes your magnetism. And those around you feel it, not just in your words, but in the silent energy that surrounds you. They may not know what has changed, but something in them softens in your presence. Something in them remembers, because that's what appreciation does, it remembers. It recalls the truth beneath the illusion, the wholeness beneath the identity, the divinity beneath the doing. And when you live in remembrance, your very life becomes a blessing, not a performance, not a pursuit, but a quiet offering to the world, a mirror through which others can begin to see the sacred in themselves. You see, you were never here to fix the world. You were here to love it. You were here to love yourself enough to stop waiting, stop wanting, and start witnessing the sacred that has always surrounded you. You were here to walk through this life, not with clenched fists, but with open hands. Not with guarded heart, but with unwavering trust. And in that openness, in that trust, in that deep and radical appreciation, you become the living embodiment of abundance itself. And so we arrive not at an ending, but at a homecoming, a gentle return to the truth that was never lost, only layered beneath the noise of seeking. The truth that abundance has never been about accumulation, but about recognition. That the gold you searched for in distant lands was always quietly glimmering within your own breath, within the ordinary miracles that cradle you each day. You no longer need to climb to feel worthy. You no longer need to run to feel progress. You no longer need to chase love. For you have remembered that love, real love, is not a destination but your natural state, the echo of the divine within you made manifest through awareness. You sit in stillness now, not out of resignation but out of reverence. You have stopped asking the world to be more, because you have trained your soul to see more. And in that seeing, life has become luminous. You wake in the morning with soft eyes, aware that even the sunlight filtering through your curtains is a gift, that the silence of your room is a sanctuary, that the rhythm of your breath is enough to bring you into communion with eternity. There is no urgency in your steps now, no pressure in your heart to perform for love. You walk gently through your days, touching everything with presence, speaking with kindness, receiving the world with the arms of appreciation stretched wide. Even in difficulty, you remain anchored, for you have learned to say thank you even through tears, to bow to the lessons disguised as loss, to meet uncertainty not with fear, but with faith in the wisdom of divine timing. The storm no longer frightens you, it humbles you, polishes you, and reminds you that you are not here to control the wind, but to dance with it. You begin to realize that your very existence is a blessing, that your presence is a contribution, that your gratitude is a ripple sent out into the vast ocean of life, changing tides in ways you may never see, but can always trust. You become the evidence of grace, not because you have all the answers, but because you have made peace with the questions, not because you have mastered life, but because you have surrendered to its sacred flow. The world may still clamor for more things, more noise, more achievement, but you have stepped outside that race. You have chosen stillness over striving, contentment over comparison, presence over performance. You no longer reach out in desperation, but in offering. You no longer speak to be heard, but to bless. You no longer seek the light, you remember that you are the light. And in this remembering, you return to yourself, to source, to the timeless truth that was waiting patiently in the space between your thoughts, that you are enough, that you are whole, that you are a vessel for something ancient and holy, that you lack nothing, because everything you have longed for was never outside of you, it was buried within, like a pearl beneath the waves, waiting only for your stillness, your attention, your appreciation. This is the truth you were born knowing and have finally come back to live. That abundance does not begin when life becomes perfect. It begins the moment you open your eyes and bless what is, when you no longer measure, but marvel, when you no longer demand, but delight, when you meet this very breath as if it were your first and your last and whisper from the depths of your soul, thank you. This is the miracle. This is the masterpiece. This is your sacred life. And now you are free.